Greetings everyone, welcome to It's a Vegan World. I'm Antoinette Naomi Redican. Today I wanted to talk to you about something that I'm not sure whether or not this is controversial or if it's something that other vegans have encountered before. However, it's something that's very serious for me health-wise, and so I want to share it with you, and hopefully it can help people. Hopefully we can have a discussion about it. Some of you that eat soy on a regular basis can maybe have some greater insight to if you're experiencing some of these symptoms. So let's jump into it. I'm talking about my painful divorce from soy. Soy used to be something that I loved. I could have soy duck, soy chicken, soy this. You could have any meat replacement made from soy. It is a beautiful thing. So when I started to experience these symptoms, because I've been a vegan for over 22 years, I started off vegetarian and then I eventually moved into being vegan. And so over 2 decades, I've been a vegan, and that's something that, tofu has been one of my main staples. And the idea of having to let go of tofu has been something that's been very tough, given my strict and strenuous lifestyle anyway. Having to let go of soy has just been a tough journey. So let me jump into some of the symptoms. One of the first symptoms that I experienced was facial acne. I had acne as an adolescent all of my life. I didn't necessarily equate it to soy. I didn't think that eating soy was causing any problem with, or causing any acne flare-ups. However, when I lived in Lyon, France, I attended a language school, Alliance Française, and whenever I went to my French class, every morning, like clockwork, I would get up and have my soy yogurt and something crispy. So I would either eat it in class or on a break or during class. I loved blueberry soy yogurt. It was my favorite, hands down. Myrtille soja, loved it. And you couldn't stop me from having it because I enjoyed it. It was something I enjoyed every day like clockwork for 9 months. But I also noticed that my skin did start flaring up acne-wise, and I thought, well, maybe it's because I'm in a new country. Perhaps it's because I used to make my skincare products. My former company that I created manufactured skincare products, and I used my skincare products exclusively. And being in a foreign country, I didn't have access to those raw materials, so I couldn't necessarily make my skincare products. And so that I equated to perhaps that was the problem. So I didn't necessarily, again, chalk it up to it being soy. However, I also experienced bloating and weight gain. I'm naturally thin. It's just who I am. It's part of my DNA, part of my genetics. I'm naturally thin. And, for some, depending on what culture you're in, that's a blessing. And depending on what other culture you're in, it's a curse. So I'm naturally thin. However, when I stopped eating soy, and I didn't learn that it was something that elevated my weight until after I quit eating soy, because once I quit eating soy, I dropped like 10, 15 pounds so quickly. And I didn't necessarily know that it was related to soy. But when I started to, or would accidentally incorporate soy into my diet, because I remember I have to take protein. I take protein supplements, and I liked pea protein because I thought, okay, well, if I get pea protein, then it's closer to the appropriate servings per day of protein that I need. And so I would get this pea protein that said soy-free. And that's another disclaimer as well. Some of those products, especially in the United States, if they say soy-free, I just invite you to really cross-reference and check it, because that product said soy-free, but it was not soy-free. My body was speaking to me. I was experiencing, I'll share with you some of the symptoms that I was experiencing with that protein, soy-free protein, pea protein that I was taking as a supplementation a little bit later after I've gone through a few of the other symptoms. I'll go back to that. So after I was taking this pea protein, one of the things that I did notice is that I was picking up weight. I picked up about 10, 15 pounds, and I call it the freshman 15. So I picked up weight, and I didn't think anything of it. Again, I thought it was related to my taking protein. The next symptom was swollen breasts. I experienced swollen breasts. So when I lived in Southern California for a brief time, I used to sell kitchens, and I would go, and I was like a kitchen salesperson. And I had to drive all around Los Angeles County, San Bernardino County, Orange County, Riverside County, and Santa Barbara County, and whatever, I think Santa Barbara is Santa Barbara County, I forget. So anyway, I had to drive around a lot in my car, and after I'd finished, I was tired and hungry, so I didn't want to cook. And so I would go to this Thai restaurant all the time. They had tofu yellow curry with brown rice. So the yellow curry was made, and they added potatoes, carrots, and onions, and green peas. I loved it. I loved it. It was one of my favorites. It was so good with soy sauce. Oh my God, I loved it. So again, though, I did notice that my breasts were swelling. I was having swollen breasts, and I thought it was just ovulating, and I didn't really pay anything to it. I didn't really pay any attention to it until later. And so let's go back to the protein. I'll tell you about that in a moment. And so the next symptom that I experienced was problems with my menstruation cycle. So like clockwork, I've been lucky to have every 28 days a flow. My cycle comes on every 28 days, 5 to 7 days, no problem. That's just been my normal cycle. And so when I lived in Southeast Asia, Bali, Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia specifically, I was eating, again, a lot of soy. I was having, because in Thailand and also in those regions, soy is a great staple. It's a part of their culture, having soy sauce, tamari, tofu as a part of their culture. And so it's ingrained in their eating regimen. And so it is also ingrained in the vegan eating regimen. So I was eating a lot of soy, specifically in Thailand, and that's when I noticed the swelling of the breasts. So go back to, remember when I was mentioning how I worked briefly selling as a salesperson in Southern California. I remember having that feeling of swollen breasts because I was eating that tofu all the time, like every day. And so again, I experienced the same thing, the swollen breasts, and this time it was a little painful because it was kind of like giving me kind of nodules under my arms too, and I was like, what's going on? And that's when I consulted a doctor, and that's when it was shown to me that I was ODing on soy. So I didn't necessarily stop my soy intake, I just lowered my soy intake. I was like, okay, let me lower my soy intake. And so I lowered my soy intake, and then it wasn't until the next symptom that I was like, okay, something's gotta give, and it's called soy. So the next symptom was excess hair shedding. I was like, why is my hair shedding? Why am I having all this? Why is this hair coming out so much? What's going on? And again, I was like, okay, let me just eliminate soy from my lifestyle, from my eating diet, and let me see if that makes a difference. And so when I eliminated soy, that's when the symptoms stopped. That's when the symptoms that I shared with you stopped. And so I say all of that to say that if you are experiencing any of these symptoms as a woman and you're eating a lot of soy, maybe, check it out. Check it out with your doctor, check it out with your nutritionist, and see whether or not there's any correlation there with you. Now, when I stopped eating soy, going back to that protein powder. Now, with that protein powder, I thought I was ingesting a protein powder, pea protein, that was soy-free. It wasn't soy-free, because when I ingested it, I experienced the swollen breasts, I experienced the bleeding twice. So one of the things that happened with me is the heavy bleeding and messing with my menstrual cycle. So like I mentioned before, I, like clockwork, had my menstrual cycle every month like clockwork, clockwork, no interruptions, no variations. I could count on it. And so with the soy, what it did is it gave me two cycles. So every 14 days I was getting a cycle. So I was like, hold on, something's going on. And so the heavy bleeding, and the last time that I inadvertently ingested soy was over the holidays, when I was like, okay, I want to have some cookies, and I had these vegan chocolate cookies, sandwich cookies, and I love those cookies. They're so good. The idea of having to say goodbye to those, I'll have to see if I can make a recipe for myself so that I can enjoy them myself without soy, without gluten. And anyway, under the disclaimer of that cookie packaging, it says was made in a facility that contained or used soy, so on and so forth. And I thought, okay, well, it was made in the facility, not necessarily made with it, because no soy was under the ingredient label. However, because of that disclaimer, they were like saying to me, hello, perhaps there's soy in here. If you don't eat soy, you gotta be careful. I thought to myself, there's no soy in there, because there's no soy in the ingredients. I'm just going to risk it. I'll be okay. So I had those cookies. I was enjoying it. It was a treat. I had those cookies over the Christmas holidays, and lo and behold, my second cycle came, and that's when I realized, oh my gosh, I had ingested soy. And so for me, it created heavy bleeding and vomiting and diarrhea. The vomiting and diarrhea was something that was that's happened intermittently as well over my life, but only literally when I have the soy. And so the vomiting and diarrhea happened, and I was thinking, well, maybe it was because I've lost so much blood and my body's in shock. Maybe that's why. I don't know, but all I know is that those were the symptoms that I experienced from ingesting soy, and those were the final straws that I needed to pull to say no more. I needed to pull those straws to say no more with ingesting soy. And so back to the protein powder, that's when I switched to brown rice protein. Brown rice protein, I noticed that I get my protein nutrition, I get my protein that I need, and I'm not playing with fire. I'm not, gambling to see whether or not, even though it says soy-free, I'm not gambling to see whether or not they're moral, ethical standards and practicing ethical standards with their ingredient labeling. And so I am okay. And so as a vegan, this is something that's very important for us, especially women, and for men it can be important because you are messing with your testosterone. Now, if you eat soy, because soy does something that I forget the type of estrogen it produces in the body. Because of that type of estrogen, it can mess up your flora. And so if it's okay for you, enjoy it, endure it, love it. However, if you're experiencing any of those symptoms that I rattled off, then maybe check with your doctor or nutritionist. So thank you so much for giving your valuable time. Thank you for taking out the time to watch this video, to hear my story, and hopefully it was something that you could relate to and you could apply to your life in some way. And so have a wonderful, beautiful day. Peace and blessings.